So that's what I'm saying. The text is like an object. It's gonna change perspective based on where you're standing.
I don't know.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I missed you, baby sweet. It was a day.
It was a day.
Please tell me you're seeing this too.
From Seattle, we're Drinking the Movies. I'm Taylor Baker.
And I'm Michael Clausen. This week we are talking about documentaries. The first podcast where we have really discussed documentaries at length.
Indeed. I would like to call the show Doc Talk, in fact.
Doc Talk. I like it.
Because we are doctors taking a deep, in-depth checkup on some of the most recent accoladed documentaries that we've avoided.
Surgical analysis is coming up. Ooh-wee.
So we're going to start out with Hedy Lamarr.
Mm-hmm.
Segue into Lady Gaga, 5'2", which will build into our discussion of McQueen.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll wrap it up with
Kedi, as well as Minding the Gap.
And for our first impressions today, we're going to be drinking a little bit of a collaboration Brut from Red Hook and Hellbent. And we're going to be watching 2 new trailers. What are those trailers?
2 documentaries. We will be watching the trailer for Pauline Kael, as well as John McEnroe.
These are not the full titles, but when we open up the browser and look at the trailer, we'll say them. So
Got it.
Let's taste this Brut.
Cheers.
How is it, Jen? Tell us.
It's beautiful. Once it hits your lips, it's so good.
What kind of beer?
This is by far the most distinctive of the beers I think we've had so far.
A broad palate.
A bit more bubbly. But crisp. I like it. What do you think?
Savory, sweet, almost got a cider taste to it, but there's hops that are bubbling to the surface.
Absolutely. This is a good change of pace. It's an IPA, but I think it is a Brut IPA?
Yes.
Which I don't know what that means, but it has something in common with wine, right?
Well, I've always called it Brut just because it's the German spelling pronunciation.
That's probably
I'm
correct.
fairly certain. But yeah, I could see how this goes through some sort of a wine process. We should probably do a collaboration podcast episode with someone who actually creates beer so that we could figure some of these smaller details out instead of seeming like amateurs.
He can correct all of my vocabulary.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and pull up the first trailer.
Let's do it.
There was a wonderful old vaudeville comic who said it takes 30 years to become an artist and 30 seconds to become a critic.
It's hard to talk seriously about movies without mentioning Pauline Kael, one of the nation's most thoughtful and provocative critics of the movies.
All right, we just watched the trailer for What She Said, a documentary about Pauline Kael. And it's just a kind of a 1-minute snippet of her digging and dogging into film criticism and film critics, but also exemplifying the traits of the ones that she thinks are valuable.
Yeah, looks like she's on a late night show or something like that, perhaps. Not only have I not seen this trailer before, I hadn't even heard of this documentary until like an hour ago. But I'm super interested in it.
Yes.
So the only other documentary that I've seen about a film critic or film criticism is Life Itself, the Roger Ebert one.
Roger Ebert, yeah. I rewatched that about a month ago, or perhaps early July, so maybe 2 months, and it really revitalized my love of criticism and what that can do for artists that are working in this field and how they can be driven to greater lengths and have greater appreciation and nuance for their craft. And I think that Pauline Kael will evoke that in a way that even Ebert didn't, because Ebert's kind of someone that's always, been part of culture since we've been alive.
Yep.
So a lot of things that we've rented when we were children had Roger and Ebert 2 thumbs up on them.
Oh, yeah.
And when we would pick something, we wouldn't know why that was important, but we knew that was a resounding reason to have a reason to do it. I particularly remember it on the cover of Princess Mononoke.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Pauline Kael is not a critic like whose work that I've read a lot of. I think I've probably read more of Roger Ebert for sure. But a critic,
I honestly haven't read much of either. I've always wanted to. I just I never got around to buying that Roger Ebert book. And I've listened to Pauline Kael a little bit more because she's got a resounding cultural icon in Camille Paglia who kind of exemplifies it.
Yeah, biting wit on display right out of the gates in the trailer, saying that 85% of the people in any given field are not that good at what they do.
Particularly her.
Yeah. One of the few things I knew about her was that she was a big champion of De Palma. So since we just recently were talking about him, I'd be curious to see if they get into that at all. I'd also read that like she was one who some people thought maybe got too close to some of her subjects.
Yes.
And that was, potentially risking, her legitimacy or bias.
Yes.
But
similar to Adam Kempenaar and Ethan Hawke.
Ooh. Who can blame him?
Even him and Patricia Clarkson at this point. They're the best of friends.
I would be willing to risk our legitimacy if we could have Ethan Hawke on the show.
I will compromise any integrity I've ever had to have Ethan Hawke on the show.
Ethan, come on board whenever you're ready.
We're waiting. You just give us a call. I'll tell you why Juliet Naked was so great.
So yeah, I'm super excited, as a movie lover, as a lover of criticism. This is catnip.
And as a lover of form, right?
Absolutely. I think it looks promising.
Well, we're going to move on to our first impression of John McEnroe in the Realm of Perfection. Let's do a little cheers and get the Oscilloscope Laboratories production going.
Cheers.
It'd be easier if people realize that it's me making a statement like, oh, you do your job and I'll do mine, rather than me just complaining for the hell of it.
All right, we just had our first impression of this new documentary featuring McEnroe. What do you think?
I thought this was a great trailer.
It is.
A lot of documentary trailers, I feel like, have the exact same kind of vibe. Usually, you're getting exactly what it's going to contain, whether it's, archival footage, interviews, that kind of thing, right off the bat, because the trailer is sort of reflecting whatever those segments are. Mm-hmm. This was purely archival footage. I'm not quite sure, what this is actually going to look like.
As a documentary?
In its construction.
Yes.
I'm very intrigued. This was really just more of an indication of the mood that they're kind of going for.
I think that because McEnroe's story is kind of restricted and you can only really show this arc in one way, that I already have a feel for how that arc is going to look, and that's basically someone full of promise blows their promise. It's the classic story of a failed athlete. Whether you want to go Tim Tebow or any first round pick that didn't work out, Jamarcus Webb, etc. You're nodding at me like, yeah, I understand these things.
Oh, I don't doubt that you are accurately name dropping.
All right. I don't mean to spit such fire.
No, you're good.
But while I was watching, what I realized was how perfectly the directors and the casting director of Borg vs. McEnroe, the feature-length film, chose Shia LaBeouf to portray this character. Because he is so volatile and you can feel a certain electricity under the surface. And every single moment is important. Even moments that he purposely, it seems, throws and makes himself a victim.
Yeah. I haven't seen the feature film, Borg versus McEnroe, but boy, it sure does look like, physicality-wise, LaBeouf was the right choice.
Yes, facial-wise as well. They have similar hair and kind of a facial construction. Yeah.
With documentaries, I tend to sort of just seek out the ones whose subjects interest me the most. It's for all my interest in form, I kind of think about actually content first when it comes to documentaries. So, as a documentary about tennis and a tennis star that I don't know much about, I don't know that I otherwise would have got this on my radar, but I'm intrigued.
Good. Good. That's why we do this, right?
That's right.
This is an episode that we're not going to be releasing for a while. This is kind of a fill episode. We're pre-recording without any planned release structure. So hopefully we'll get this out when we are both taking a nice, much-earned vacation. And also right before either of these films come out. But
we're
just
looking
so the audience knows why.
Time horizon-wise, maybe looking a little bit further out on the Pauline and Kael one, since it sounds like distribution's maybe still to be determined.
It's going through its second festival run at the moment, and there is no available pre-order on the website that I was able to find. And I couldn't locate any sort of a release calendar. Whereas this John McEnroe one is currently in circulation at 3 kind of landmark theaters, it seems, in the California, LA, Hollywood area.
It's doing the rounds, so it'll make its way to us.
Yes.
Cool.
And Oscilloscope's pretty good about getting that on digital distribution, so that should be easy for everyone to find moving forward. All right. Well, I guess we're done here. Should we jump to our Hedy Lamarr? Do you by chance remember its full title?
I don't think I do. I think it's Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story.
I think that you're closer than I could be. But I'll go ahead and look up our Letterboxd log and see exactly what it is called.
Just for the sake of precision.
Exactly.
Let's at least start by getting the name of the movie correct.
Let us
Since
be
everything
accurate.
else I say will be wrong.
Boom. Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story. You were
That's
pretty
it for
close.
me.
You forgot the colon.
I'm going to retire at the top. I'm done.
She did have a secret.
Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, that's her technology.
You think, how could this be possible?
If I wanted to be harsh, I would say she was a plagiarizer.
You don't get to be Hedy Lamarr and smart.
I know what I did. There comes a point when you can't take any more, then you have to make yourself heard.
I was mildly positive on this one.
What was your ranking of it?
I gave it a 3.
Gave
3
it
out of 5.
Gotcha.
I don't think I gave it the heart, if I recall correctly. But still leaning more towards a positive feel than I think a negative feel. How about you? Just a baseline?
2.5.
2.5. Little
They
lower.
made a film.
Neutral. Right down the middle.
Right down the middle. It makes some overtures and claims that it has in common with like 3 Identical Strangers, where it seems to reach beyond its scope of understanding. And I would rather it just focused on her emotional feeling for what was the name of the film that she did in Europe?
Ecstasy.
I would rather have it focus on ecstasy and the fallout of her choice to do that film, and whether or not she really chose to do that, and actually dig in there. Focus on her fleeing Nazi Germany ahead of her time. Focus on her inventions earlier on. They kind of begin it so that she's a victim. Then they build things as if she's more than she appears to be. Then they say that she's a victim again when she's choosing to have all these plastic surgeries. And then at the end, it kind of, capitalizes in the classic, we use everything that she invented without really digging into that. And I would rather have it be an entire documentary focused on proving the claim that her invention affects every single patent that's making over $1 billion today. That's an electronic patent that's about wireless connection.
Yeah.
Or on her emotional devastation at the Nazi German rise and the fallout of her choice to do ecstasy and her the reasons why she ran through men so often.
Yeah, so one thing that I think I've maybe picked up on in how we differ in our appreciation of documentaries is you prefer a more essay-like format where you kind of want your thesis up front and you want your evidence to follow it. To me, this was a more...
when we get to McQueen, just to fight against you, when we get to McQueen, I don't think it has a thesis, and I still liked it. Same for Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I need a theme, but I think that in a film or a documentary film that makes a thematic claim at the end, then I get angry because they weren't upfront about wanting to make a thematic claim. So I think you are picking up on something I just kind of twisted. a little bit. And that if they do make a claim, I don't think it's excusable.
Yeah, that's interesting. But to me, I mean, I think it hits me differently when this is partly just when a documentary is a life story. There's something to just being chronological, and therefore the point that is ultimately being made involves something that happens in later life, and therefore you kind of have to start with the background in order to sort of fill out sort of the color of this person's life.
I agree, and that's why I think that this particularly would be like a great 2-part documentary where they build up her suffering, her anguish, the reason why she was on all these pills and how that affected her, and how beautiful a mind she had. And then spend another, 80 minutes or 75 minutes on the patent. Yeah. And show me in factories, show me diagrams, show me working versions of technology, show me experts in the field explaining to me these claims that you're making about her invention being worth trillions, essentially.
Yeah, we looked for different things. I don't know that I needed that. Anytime I started getting into the diagrams, I think I was less interested in it.
I was too, but that's, I think, because they had a strong emotional documentary. Mm-hmm. And I think that they could have built that into a final claim about her being a tortured genius. And then they could have had a second part that was, more about that Bombshell title.
Yeah. I mean, to me, in a way, the thesis is known up front if you just read the description of the documentary, right? I mean, to me, we know what we're getting into, right? I didn't read the
description to any of these documentaries.
I'm just diving
I don't
into
like
them.
to do that. I like to go in blind.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I think I was more sympathetic to her story. I mean, I guess on one hand, just in general, like, any kind of story about sort of like the forgotten or overlooked histories of Hollywood, like, that's just something I'm naturally going to gravitate towards, right? It's just content that I find interesting. I think that the director, I think her name was Alexandra Dean, if I remember correctly, did really set out on a pretty difficult project when the material to use, like in actually constructing this documentary, is kind of limited. Like, it's mostly just photographs.
Mm-hmm. And interviews with family members.
Yeah. I actually was kind of impressed with the collage of the portraits and photographs of her. That's like, I don't know, 70% of the documentary. Mm-hmm. In still sort of giving me this vivid impression of her.
Was beautiful, and if or at least very well done and well structured.
Yeah.
And if that's part of the reason why you gave it a high rating, and I absolutely think that fits into the characteristics of what you like, because that's just good form.
Yeah, yeah. Some of the interviews I thought were a little lackluster.
Which one?
So there was, I'm not going to be able to remember who was who interview-wise, but I can give you an example. It was after the shoplifting incident where they talk about Hedy, for some unknown reason, shoplifting.
Wow,
and
she
people
just
don't
got
know
a bunch
why.
of money on her.
And she ends up going to jail, I think. And they interview, I want to say they interview at least a couple people, but one woman for sure, just because I remember her face, and they interview her and ask her why she thinks she did it, and she says, I don't know, and she kind of shrugs. To me, that it was moments like those where I thought maybe some of these interviews just weren't really justified. Like there was sort of this feeling that they were kind of grasping for material, just to fill out this documentary. It's like an interesting story, but there are still, things you have to find to sort of move it along. And I thought, like, I don't know that this was critical to sort of the momentum.
That's very interesting, because I view those moments as absolutely critical in my version of how the documentary should have gone, which is that 2-parter. Where you build up that, well, we don't know why she did it. Okay, well, what we do know is that she's on a bunch of drugs.
Yeah.
What we do know is that she had an adopted child who requested to leave and live with someone else, and she granted it and never talked to him again.
Yeah.
What we do know is the granddaughter only would receive photos that were signed of her grandmother when she was young. Yeah. I think that was a really smart tone if they wouldn't have tried to make that claim much like Three Identical Strangers goes to make at the end, that all this stuff is factually true. I'm not disputing it's factually true, but the way they present it is very disputable. And I just don't know. And I'd rather have an hour and a half or 80 minutes spent on understanding the woman that was kind of taken advantage of, that was using English as a second language, that was being told that these shots were vitamins, and became addicted to these hard drugs, and began to have an addiction to plastic surgery, and had a falling out with her children and began to behave differently. I would rather have a really tight section on that and kind of relying on ecstasy to fill that out. And then I would rather have a separate uplifting documentary about these brief moments in time where she was able to be coherent and make these beautiful creations, and hear her talk about how her mind works on those tapes and the interview that she did over the phone in the 90s. And show me diagrams and get me interacting with experts that are explaining to me and showing me exactly how her ideas went on to shape these things. But to me, if you try to condense them both into an hour and a half documentary, that's where it's flawed to me.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. To me, I don't know that I'd want to watch it if it were that long. I do.
Well, if
it
was a 2-part documentary, right? Then it's number one, it's shorter the first time you watch it. Number two, you watch it in 2 parts.
I thought you meant like 2 distinct, like hour and a half long documentaries. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So like 2 80-minute documentaries.
Gotcha.
That are part of a collection together, but you wouldn't sit down and watch them back to back unless you chose to.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, to me, I was like, I almost had the opposite response, where I felt like there was a limited amount of material to stretch that 90 minutes, and you're thinking they could have gone even bigger.
I think they could have gone bigger if they would have gotten technological experts.
Yeah. I mean, totally get that. I understand.
Dig into patent law and patents, and really explain this from this angle. Make some comparisons to Einstein and how he got to control his things because he was working in a patent office or something, and then really dig into the town that she left and what happened after Nazi Germany took over. What happened to the people she knew? Because I feel like you can fill that first half, like an 80-minute half, absolutely brimming if you focus more on what she fled, what happened to her family, the fallout of the timeline of when her father dies and how she changes her behavior patterns. I think there's a good psychological investigation to be had there, and I think there's an equally good technological, factual documentary to be made about what the consequences of her invention were, and perhaps an interesting facet of this labor of love between her and a man that she may have been romantically entangled with. We don't really know, but based on the context of her and men, it seems slightly likely.
I think I was more comfortable with the direction it did take than you wanted more from these certain angles. I mean, first and foremost for me,
that's probably a good sign, right? That I wanted more, at least.
Rather than wanting to turn it off. I mean, I think, especially like right now in this cultural moment, like I think we hear a lot about women who feel like they were disadvantaged because of their looks, and perhaps because they were told they weren't good looking enough. I think this is, in a way, I'm just on my personal experience, like, and from my reading of the cultural moment, I think you hear a little less about women who feel like it's their beauty that's a trap for them, that's a prison for them, as sort of in a personal and emotional point. I think that point was made clear for me, and I think that resonated with me.
But I just watched this recent documentary called Iris, where she keeps bringing up this fact. She's in her 90s. She's a fashion designer. But she keeps bringing up this fact, and I'll bring her up again with McQueen probably, that she was born ugly. But she's glad of it because she had to learn skills. And the girls she knew that were beautiful, they aged and decayed and had nothing. But she always had a tool to use to make herself beautiful and to keep herself busy, basically, which is to make herself look snappy and full of pizzazz and in these outrageous costumes and outfits and things.
Yeah.
So it is interesting that this is a that point in history, women are very the way that we talk about women is very much one way or the other. It's either they were restricted by their beauty, or they were restricted by their lack of it. Which back to the Naked City, when we're just watching the subway and every single woman is wearing heels and not wearing pants. They're all wearing skirts or dresses.
Yeah.
There is certainly a societal shift that's happened. That's a beautiful shift that's happened.
Yeah.
And it is really hard to figure out how to bring the societal shift into context when we're watching these documentaries about these older characters who are women.
Yeah. So with regard to this societal shift that you're talking about, just
women being allowed to wear pants, basically the first wave of feminism.
Yeah. But just in the context
stay
of
out
this,
late.
What's the connection to the documentary?
Oh, how Hedy Lamarr was alive and working in the system, in the studio system before these shifts happened.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah.
Because she was a victim of those circumstances. She couldn't have just stopped playing beautiful parts.
Yeah.
Even when Jane Fonda started 30 years later, she's still best known for Barbarella, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what's interesting to me is right now it sounds like you're right now you're describing a case for it. To me, it's like if you just kind of accept that what she did invent was valuable in the long run for technology, then the point of the story for me is just that how tremendously unfortunate it was that it was her beauty that put her into a certain trajectory that she otherwise might not have taken, and otherwise would have provided perhaps much greater value.
So you think that I'm making a case against what?
I thought it sounded to me like maybe you were making a case for why it was a good documentary.
Oh no, I'm making the case that it's important to keep the societal shift in mind.
Gotcha.
And to a character who was alive before and after that first wave of feminism, really, where girls began to be allowed to stay out late without supervision, where birth control was all of a sudden on the market, where they could wear pants and shoes.
Yeah.
Those are pretty big societal shifts.
Yeah.
And so I think that is an important context to have when you watch a story like this, to understand the character behind it. And that's not necessarily a comment about the documentary, but merely the woman behind it, and understanding her more.
Contextual note.
Yeah, and her limitations and restrictions and what she was thinking, because the only reason she's alive possibly is because of her beauty. Fleeing Nazi Germany, because she got on that ship and got that $500 a week check because of her beauty. Yeah. Is at least how it's portrayed within the documentary.
Yeah. I think I agree with most of what you're saying, and that's why it did strike a chord for me.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly good conversation. It's just I have some problems with the craftsmanship behind it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Not the lady. Great lady.
Yeah. That makes sense.
All right, let's move on to number 2 and have another little bit of this beer here.
Cheers. Still good.
It is. Now we're going to get to probably my favorite documentary. Even though it's not my highest rated, it's probably my favorite. That is Lady Gaga, 5'2".
What happened in the last 5 years? Real fans probably knew deep down that there was something going on.
Paranoia, fear, body pain, anxiety.
I go from everyone touching me all day and talking at me all day to total silence. And all these people will leave, and then I'll be alone.
I didn't feel good enough, and I do now. That's the good part.
This is a good documentary.
This is a great year in the life, even though it feels like a day in the life, documentary with Lady Gaga herself, the star of A Star Is Born.
That's right, which is probably why this got on your radar. Was it in anticipation of the Bradley Cooper directorial debut.
That's why I'm certainly on my Lady Gaga high right now with that trailer, and that's certainly why I would have clicked it. But it had been in my queue for quite some time.
Got it.
I've been meaning to get
gestating.
to it, but once I see her pick up that microphone and sing in the trailer, it's absolutely necessary for me to watch this.
Yeah. I like this documentary quite a bit. Didn't have terribly high expectations, but I think it exceeded my expectations. Often when I watch documentaries like this, I'm a little weary of them feeling perhaps like promotional material in some way.
Yes.
I think you get that often with celebrity
and luckily
documentaries.
We didn't get that at all with this one. It was just as unflattering as it was flattering. Mm-hmm. And moments of joy were often moments of inexorable pain and tears, and it was just a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah, I would agree. I guess there's kind of like two trajectories we're watching. It's her prepping for the release of her new album, as well as her approach to the Super Bowl performance.
Mm-hmm. And then we have these brief interludes of people that are close to her dying or becoming sick. Yeah. Or her writing a song for that album about someone who's died already to try to reconcile or give life to the emotions that are in the family that she's grown up with. And then there's also these moments of her acting and her getting acting jobs and it all or figuring out her costumes and all these things. We do a mini collage about midway through, I want to say, where we see her walking out of the same building when she's announcing either her tour or it's the first day of her album's release or something, and she's always in these outrageous outfits.
Oh, yeah.
And one of those outfits was made by McQueen.
Oh, I don't think I realized that.
Yes.
Yeah. That was actually one of my favorite moments, for sure. Maybe yours as well. That's maybe why you mentioned it.
Yeah.
But, there's some nice cutting there, right, between that archival footage and her walking out in the current moment. And speaking for myself, like, part of what I have always thought about Lady Gaga has had a lot to do with just what she's wearing, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that is a nice illustration of her finally just showing us, who she is.
She's very much an artist that we project onto what we think of what we're seeing.
Yeah.
We aren't really thinking about her lyricism or her performance chops or the range of her voice like we would with an Ella Fitzgerald or something.
Yeah.
With her, we are, she wants us to arguably as well, but we're kind of making her a Madonna. Yeah. Not just like the performance Madonna, but we're making her a Madonna.
Yeah.
And unlike Amy Winehouse, she has this great, strong family, this really great relationship with her father. And that's what I was watching constantly, because Amy is kind of always in my mind, the great documentary by Asif Kapadia. Mm-hmm. Anytime I watch something about a performance artist or an artist, he captured really neutrally what Amy's downfall seems to be and what the downfall seems to be of many artists. And that's a bad family relationship and an especially bad relationship with the father. And Gaga doesn't have any of this, and it seems to be her greatest strength because she's got a lot of other weaknesses: her temper, her work schedule, her body breaking down and putting her in excruciating pain. But this family crux that is kind of also the crux of the film.
To me, like, I kept kind of waiting for maybe an explosion or something like that of anger at the people around her not getting something right or not being supportive enough, but it's really just quite the opposite. Like, there's at least a couple times, I think, where she says, like, I don't know how I would do this, like, if you guys weren't here. Like, there is very clear humility on display and just graciousness.
She does have, an unflattering breakdown where she is completely honest about the fact that she had it while she's doing a scene for American Horror Story Coven. I believe is the season that they would have been on then.
Made me want to watch it.
Yeah, I've always wanted to watch it. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Maybe we'll have to do
there we go.
One of those seasons for our Halloween theme coming
up
soon.
That could be fun.
But her, my personal favorite moment with her is when she accidentally hits her producer's car in the parking lot shortly after she gets her first license.
Yeah.
At the age of 31.
Yeah.
I believe she gets her first license. And the humility and the how quick she is to tell him is really endearing and sweet, to be honest.
Yeah.
It kind of made me fall in love with the performer.
Yeah. I was even touched by his response. Yeah. Obviously, she's going to pay for it, but he was still so sympathetic, and he's like, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Didn't he say, like, if it's the worst thing you do during this album, then we're doing fine?
Yeah. I think he had that right. That was a good moment. One moment I really liked was when the lead singer from Florence and the Machine is like guest singing on a song, and Lady Gaga's about to tweet something or put something. Oh, gotcha. She's about to put something on social media. I don't remember if it was a picture or what.
It was a picture of them in the studio recording that song.
Yeah. And I think her name's Florence Walsh, says, like, oh my gosh, like, you're about to hit send, like, isn't it crazy, like, that you're, like, about to send that to however many millions of people? And she just kind of, Gaga just kind of, like, stops and, like, stares at her in response and is like, don't remind me of that. Like, it's funny, but it's also, like, terrifying.
And
like,
identifiable.
Yeah.
It's very human and like, I felt like anyone could feel that exact way, and that's how most people would feel.
Yeah. A really small moment that I realized, like, God, just the pressure I would feel with that many followers trying to manage a social media account every day and think about what I might be projecting about myself with each and every post. I was like, wow, a lot was in that moment for me.
Another great moment is when she's doing the kind of the last day preparation before the Super Bowl halftime show near the very end of the film, and she tells everyone besides the performers that they have to be at the top of their game and they have to do everything perfect because her performers are dying and they're working harder than everyone else, and she's going to ask for everything out of them, so everyone else needs to give more than they're giving her.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really great moment because she's sticking up for kind of the people that are allowing her to excel.
Yeah.
And it was just really touching.
Yeah, in a way, it's like, it's just good leadership.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird to think about what this
yeah.
documentary is about, but I mean, you could definitely look at it from that angle. I would totally agree.
I think that you definitely can make a case that in order to be as successful continuously as she's been, she is a good leader.
Yeah.
And a strong one with a backbone of sympathy, but also it doesn't bend and it knows what it wants.
Yeah.
And you see that in her outfits.
Yeah. In order to kind of retain, her artistic voice and not, be pushed around in any given direction by all these people surrounding her.
Who are pushing her constantly.
Yeah, she does seem to remain in control, and that's, like, what's sort of, like, awe-inspiring and obviously, like, where the pressure comes from.
So
right?
there's this fascinating moment of, I can't tell if it's manipulative control or if it's, like, she's playing into something that she just understands about the interaction she's going to have, but there is a key meeting in the film where she's going over the approach for her album Joanne and kind of what it's going for in this back to black look. And this entire meeting, she's out having a meeting with multiple people topless.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And at first you're like, well, she's eccentric, and then you think more about her behavior before this, and it seems like it's more she doesn't give a fuck, and it's also deliberate.
Yeah. And
I think that that was maybe a power move by her to kind of get what she wanted.
Oh, that's interesting. That was a very different interpretation. I guess I thought to myself, because it is sort of a striking scene all of a sudden, was just that perhaps with her privacy ultimately so limited, she just has to be herself sort of no matter what's going on. Otherwise, she might never be herself. I think that
contributes to it, but I don't know if it's necessarily an overt sense of power control or if it's more of a subconscious one, but I do think that's a power move.
Yeah,
to
whether
show
it's
up to a
intended or not.
business
Yeah.
meeting with 7 other people naked, basically,
Yeah.
beside a pool it's kind of a power move.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what are you going to tell me?
Yeah.
And all they told her was yes.
Yeah. Which is fascinating because the other people don't seem terribly surprised. You're like, this is not unusual.
Yeah, no, that's why I think that it kind of fits with her personality.
Mhm.
But I also think that maybe her personality has a harshness to it.
Mm.
And I think that maybe she developed that because she didn't believe that she was beautiful. Much like we see in the Star is Born trailer, and she kind of goes on to elaborate on how she doesn't think she's beautiful, and that's maybe why she's wearing these outfits, kind of like Iris is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I did think there were nice, like, allusions to her love life and sort of, like, romantic stressors.
Mm-hmm.
But,
You remember who her love life was with?
No. I haven't kept up with her love life.
Taylor.
Yeah, but who is that? Is that a celebrity or
I'd
no?
like it to be me.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me something?
I'm telling you something.
But it just never became too sappy, too sentimental. That was just alluded to, acknowledged, and
sincere. It was sappy and sentimental, but in a sincere way, because it was such brief moments of heartbreak.
Yeah.
She gets a bouquet at the end before her halftime show after she's broken up with her fiance, Taylor.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a rolling moment where she's having these interactions with people and talking about this bouquet, and she hides it, and then she tells everyone she's not going to hide it. And,
yeah.
You know, and I think that's kind of an allegory to her interacting with the breakup in public as well.
Yeah.
She's going to hide it. She's not going to hide it.
Yeah. I still have no idea. Because it does
start out with her saying they're on the rocks, they're not getting along, and we never see him, and all of a sudden they're broken up.
Yeah, yeah, and those kind of build, to her talking about wanting a family. And I think those are emotional moments, but they aren't melodramatic.
No,
they're very sincere.
Yeah, and her, when her hip is tight, it's just as heartbreaking as when her heart is broken.
Yeah,
it's this thing where we truly come to understand that this art that she's giving the audience and that she's expressing through herself means just as much as a relationship does in real life.
Yeah,
it's kind of a separate relationship she has with herself and the audience, as well as this familial relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that by illustrating that constantly throughout the film, showing us these interactions she's having with her family and how crucial those are to her identity and her solace and her fortitude and the phone call she has when someone is no longer in remission and the cancer is back.
Yeah,
these are all moments that made me just feel like she was this living, breathing person in a way that the Hedy Lamarr documentary didn't. And it's restricted because Hedy's dead.
Yeah.
But this is truly bringing out the best facets of a day in the life documentary.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think one thing you risk with documentaries like this when you're showcasing the life of a ultra wealthy celebrity is leaving the viewer a little bitter about all that they have. And whether or not, there is humility or appreciation. And I didn't come away thinking like, oh yeah, like I'm so glad she appreciates it. It wasn't that, but it was more like, I'm so glad that like she has these services that obviously like nobody else could afford. But like on one hand, to think about a celebrity having, a bed in their private jet, I'm like, oh, that sounds so decadent. But when you see her finally like crash on it, you're like, oh my gosh, she looks so exhausted,
and it's very well earned, right?
Yeah, like you just are so happy for her for having that bed. You were like, go to bed.
Thank God.
You earned it.
Please sleep. Show me her sleeping.
Yeah. You're never bitter about what she has. You're like, she deserves every dollar of it.
And because she's not being decadent, her passion seems to be her art and her expression of herself. So I would say her outfits are kind of where she spends the most money. Otherwise, she, has an apartment or a home in the places that she's most likely to be able to visit the most often. She has some dogs.
Yeah.
She has a open top Jeep. She's not living a crazy life of decadence.
Yeah.
And she's being chauffeured around and told what to do by a bunch of people. Yeah. Which requires quite a bit of restraint and, open-mindedness.
Yeah, yeah. I did like some of those cuts to the dogs.
I did too.
They're pugs, I think, right?
I think
if I remember correctly, or maybe terriers,
ones,
maybe Boston Terriers. I'm trying to not pugs. Yeah, you're right. I think they were something else.
There's dogs in like the apartment when she's playing Joanne for or that song off Joanne, which I don't. Is it called Joanne?
The album? Yeah, I think that's right.
No, the title of the song she was playing for her grandmother. I don't think it is. I can't remember the exact song, which is really bad of me because I've been listening to that album about once a day since we watched it about 2 weeks ago. But hey,
show notes.
But there's dogs there, and then there's dogs when she's at her apartment. There's kind of dogs around when she's getting her massage while she's having that breakdown. And then her strength of will to question herself while she's suffering to the camera and getting that massage to say, I think that you already touched on it. She basically explains that she's really happy that she can pay to take care of herself, but she's super sad for all the people that have her condition who can't.
Yeah.
And she wonders if she's just being a big baby and if she should just put up with it. And she's wondering this aloud and kind of going down this rabbit hole of questioning herself and whether or not she's kind of living a delusion of fake pain or something.
Yeah.
Which is very admirable.
Yeah.
In the context of the film.
Yeah, yeah. There is vocal self-criticism, I think, on display.
Yeah.
Which is pretty essential to
having your head on straight.
Making something that's going to elicit any sympathy from us.
But it also seems to be why she's in the position to be a decade in now. And hasn't really lost a step.
Yeah.
I think that everyone that loved her probably still at least likes her.
Yeah.
And I think that there's just 10 years of children that have grown up liking her stuff now too. I don't think she's done anything to ever lose a listener like other pop stars do.
Yeah.
She seems to be going against the curve on that structure.
Yeah, you see plenty of pop stars go through cycles of rebranding or reimaging themselves, right? Like Miley Cyrus is maybe the most obvious one who...
But also, I personally think she earned it.
So that's a separate conversation. But I think...
We'll have to dig into this after the show.
Those are perhaps like a bolder or like more obvious kinds of like changes in image.
I think you're comparing a child who doesn't have an identity to someone who came to fame during their identity.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the shifts in image that feel more organic, I think, are the ones that usually don't risk antagonizing me as much. It's the ones that feel more calculated that might rub me the wrong way sometimes. And
like
if
Snoop
this
Lion.
is... Yeah, this is a great example.
Or perhaps Diddy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He is the king of rebranding himself, right? He changes his name once a decade or something.
I don't think he's really a king because I don't listen to him anymore.
Yeah. But, like, if this is a transitional moment for her, like, it feels totally natural.
And it doesn't feel like she's not going to do what she's done before again, either.
Yeah.
I think that she's going to expand her audience with A Star Is Born. They're going to go listen to Joanne, and they're going to think, I really like this gal. And then I think she's probably going to release something and wear, a meat coat or a coat made of, like, circumcised foreskins or something. And release a crazy dance album and, get back right on her thing. And, I'll just be along the ride no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one worth checking out, whether you like her music or not. Like, I don't listen to her a ton. I hadn't before this documentary. I listened to her a couple times since then. But I think it's a good doc either way.
It is. It's available on Netflix, as is, I believe, the Hedy Lamarr story, Bombshell.
That's right.
And if you watch 5'2", you can YouTube right after, and I'll try to make sure that there's links up by the time you listen to this. You can watch the Super Bowl halftime show for free on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And then you can watch her doing a promo for it on James Corden's Tonight Show. It's about a 30-minute segment you can watch for free also on YouTube where they do the car karaoke for a good 12 minutes, and then it's 18 minutes of her just kind of being her affable, lovable self. So
I like that.
It's a great pairing. That's the pairing that I did with it, and it really made me leave just with a smile on my face, loving Gaga.
It's a good combo. We're moving on to our third documentary, which is McQueen.
It is McQueen.
Should we take another sip before we continue? Cheers.
Oh yeah, that's tasty. Just going down the pipe smooth.
It's exactly what I needed.
All
right.
So we're going to dig into a fashion icon.
That's right. This is the documentary McQueen.
I was always drawing clothes.
He was a very happy child.
He was passionate. When Lee was 17, he said, I'll make you a couple of skirts. I've got to say, they fit like a glove.
He was drawing from all of these influences.
Jack the Ripper stalks his victims.
In the early years, Lee had seen violent things.
The darkness created genius.
Nobody could create emotions like McQueen.
Which is...
That I drug you to kind of misanthropic and unenthused.
Yes. This is not about the actor Steve McQueen, nor is it about the director Steve McQueen. It is about the fashion designer Steve McQueen.
And I did not understand that it was about anyone in particular before I went. I just knew that it was getting a kind of decent critical reception, and I wanted to go see it. And you wanted to go see Cameron Post, so we went ahead and saw Cameron Post on Friday, and on Saturday after our recording, we went and saw this one.
That's right. There was a give and take.
So, which one did you like more, just off the top?
I think I probably like Cameron Post more.
You're a monster.
I take it you like McQueen better.
I did. I liked its 5-act structure. I thought that it was a unique style for a documentary that I hadn't seen before. Especially a documentary that has to rely on archival footage. That does give such a strong portrait of the man and his art.
Yeah, you say unique. What felt unique?
The 5-act structure. It reminded me of a 5-act play structure. You know, the rise, and then the kind of exposure of the man, the disillusion of the man, the the peaking of him when he is clearly beginning to fall but doesn't know it himself, and then the fall, the inevitable death of the man.
I think exactly what you liked is just what I didn't like. It's not fair to say that I just didn't like this. This is just not one that terribly excited me. But it felt like I would call this a rags to riches story.
I'd call it a tortured artist story.
Yeah. Totally fair. I think you might guess what you're going to get going into this documentary, and you get precisely that.
Yes, luckily I did not have a clue.
That's right. So that probably plays a role.
I knew it was called McQueen, and that the art for the film looked interesting. And that's because he was a fabric artist.
Yeah. I thought this was totally fine. Not one that I can really point to many flaws in its construction or its pace or its
Well, I think when we came out of it, you thought it was kind of overly long. Have you changed that?
I don't remember what the runtime was.
I think it was about 3.
2 hours and 3 minutes?
I think so.
I don't know that I can't say I've felt that since viewing it. I don't doubt that I might have said that. To me, this is kind of one of those documentaries about artists where I kind of feel like how radical this artist was merited a documentary that was more radical in form.
I agree with you.
Yeah, there wasn't anything that I felt like that got me to sort of experience what it was he wanted, what he says he wanted us to experience about his clothes. But this is sort of the story of his life. So I think, I can appreciate this as just a telling of his rags to riches arc. But I think I was really more excited by the possibility of feeling that sort of repulsion or excitement that he described his clothes as, producing. And I don't think that documentary quite, like, gave me that feeling.
Did you not have moments of it?
Not to the extent that I wanted them. I did.
I
saw the
moments
artistry.
To the extent that you're explaining that I wanted either.
Mm-hmm.
But there are certain moments when they're showing us those shows.
Yeah.
And the walls come down.
Mm.
Or she's walking around this one-way mirror structure.
Yeah.
Kind of rubbing her hand and her tongue and her face up against these walls. Much like an animal. And then at the end, finally, the walls fall down and they depict this... what did he say? Incubus? Or was it a succubus?
Yeah,
but
something like that.
He wanted, something that was beautiful to look at, but that went kind of against all grains of what you would find pleasure in typically.
Yeah.
And I love that. Those moments, and the moments where the factory show car caught on fire, and he told them not to put it out, and he kept marching his models out, even though the gas tank could have blown at any moment. I think that kind of shows the live wire edge that he was living on that inevitably would lead to his downfall.
Yeah, those absolutely were the best moments and my favorite moments. But they're ones that really just made me excited for a feature film about Steve McQueen. Like, I am tremendously excited for that possibility.
Steve McQueen, directed by Steve McQueen?
Yes. Absolutely.
He is done with Widows.
My most anticipated movie, if such a film were to exist.
Could he get Elizabeth Debicki to play that curious crooning? What would that be? Not a protege. He would be her protege. Master, I suppose.
Almost, it was his financier, right? She was funding him, right?
But also his teacher, his mentor.
Yeah.
His mentor, I would say.
Yeah, she could fill that role, I think.
Yes. Viola Davis in some role that we just come up with a reason to have her.
yeah, absolutely.
This is Widows talk.
Yeah. I think sometimes feature films are better than documentaries at getting at emotional truths. And one of the, I think, emotional truths that this was sort of lacking for me is what it was like to really be one of those shows. I couldn't quite get there, even though I was really impressed with the artistry. I just can imagine what a director who really knows how to move the camera would do.
I absolutely agree. I felt like I was a voyeur of the voyeurs at those shows. I was watching them watch it.
Yeah.
Not that I was watching it. And I think that that's a restriction due to his death and the fact that this is archival footage. And I think that maybe I'm granting it more leniency than I granted Hedy Lamarr. And I think you're granting it less leniency than you granted Hedy Lamarr.
Yeah. That could be. I was absolutely moved by some of the interviews with him.
Especially his liposuction pre and post self. That was hard to deal with because he didn't like himself when he was skinny.
Yeah.
And he thought that he would, and he developed these drug addictions and had these fallouts with his friends, and then his friend calls him up out of nowhere after 3 years, and he says, "Where have you been? Get over here now."
Yeah. To me, it was something about his voice too, where there was kind of you hear the fragility in his voice,
the pain.
You almost didn't even need to show me that. Had I just heard that in an audio clip, I was like, "Is that guy all right?"
Yeah. Anguish.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he is an artist whose art is filled with anguish, and his life story is filled with anguish. The abuse and the abuse of the women in his family. We were kind of, I think, 2 episodes into Sharp Objects when we watched that documentary, and I'd been kind of building up a interplay between those two in my head of how the witness of these monstrosities and abuse corrupts and inevitably leads to a less fulfilling and less lengthy life. These patterns of historical violence that Gillian went on to depict in Sharp Objects and much of her other stuff, and that Steve McQueen lived through.
Yeah.
Or not Steve McQueen. Is his name Steve?
I think it is Steve McQueen.
Well,
yeah.
Shit. I guess I'm
That's
right.
why it's even harder, right?
Oh, I think that in the documentary he says that his mother named him Steve McQueen because she thought Steve McQueen was handsome.
Yeah, we need to know their middle names.
We do.
Is basically what would help us right now.
What about his college story? Was that grounding for you? Did that kind of provide some of these emotional stakes that you often look for in a film? Or do you not look for those in documentaries?
Yeah, I remember him talking a little bit about him using his welfare check to fund his fashion design.
And he would go take beans from his parents' house or go eat dinner with them.
Yeah. Yeah, and that absolutely struck a chord. There's I think you have to be kind of an empty person to not feel something when you see a person trying that hard to pursue what they love, right? It's hard. I just think it'd be hard for anybody not to feel something.
Yeah, I think that due to it being limited to archival footage, it could have been possibly near as good as 5'2" was. Mm-hmm. If we were allowed to spend a day in the life or a year in the life of watching him balance these two different clothing companies he was running. He was running his own McQueen, and then he was running a separate label that I don't recall the name of in France. And he was the first designer who ever went down and ate food with his employees in the lunch hall. And I felt like if we could have had a documentary detailing these moments, kind of when he first hits, through running those two different fashion design houses or companies, that would have been a lot better of a documentary. But I think that with the limitations built in by his death, it was serviceable, and I derived great pleasure from the 5-act play structure. I just have to be transparent about that. I always like it when I see it.
Yeah. It's a nice, smooth, and satisfying arc. Yeah. Like I said, there aren't too many things that I would point to as wrong. It's just, the form, I think, is limited in how excited I can get about it. And when the long-rumored feature does eventually come out, I think whatever director is behind that film should be willing to take a little liberty and try to get at what some of those emotional objectives were that McQueen was pursuing.
So there is going to be a feature film.
Well, it has been rumored for a long time. I think it's one of those movies that's like bounced between directors and stuff.
That's interesting because if we were talking about like 1999 through maybe 2006, I would put up Christian Bale in prosthetic makeup as an actor who could possibly play McQueen, because whoever this is going to have to go through rapid weight loss. If it's going to be a decent film. Or like not a decent film, that's unfair, but if it's going to be a film of authenticity, and if they're going to use fat suits, I don't know that I would like it as much. I kind of, if they're going to do it, I want an authentic, breakdown where I watch a man slowly wither himself, and that's why I like Christian so much, because of what he does to himself in The Machinist. Or what was that other film that he did? Rosario Dawson.
Ooh, I don't think I know that.
Came out in 2013, I want to say.
Out of the Furnace.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that was just a guess. First one that came to mind.
Yeah, the weight loss that he goes through, and I know that he's using prosthetics for his new Dick Cheney film, but the transformations he goes through, even The Big Short, that he's just one of those actors who kind of becomes something. And I'm wondering if you have a feel for who you would want to play McQueen. When I'm wondering all these things aloud, that's what I meant to ask you.
Yeah, so I do naturally go for just who has the natural resemblance, and I think maybe with sort of that rounded, the roundedness of his head, I could kind of see Jonah Hill pulling this off in his first big dramatic role. Is that hard to get your head around?
No, that's perfect, but I just don't want Jonah to tack on weight again.
I know.
So great now.
He does
I don't
look
want
sharp.
him to have to do it.
This is true.
I don't. I like skinny Jonah. He's a healthier Jonah that's not going to die as quickly. I'd rather have him stay
True.
skinny.
Maybe that's just not cool of me.
He's done it so much, I don't want him to have to do it again.
He's like, seriously, guys, I worked so hard.
But I am skeptical of his ability to pull off that accent. I don't know if it's a Cockney accent exactly.
It is a...
But it is a strong British
specific,
accent. And it almost has a lisp to it at the end.
Yeah.
Where I think that maybe you have to pick more of a British actor.
Yeah.
You might have to lean into the pool of, Harry Potter talent.
Yeah, exactly.
I could see, maybe Neville Longbottom gaining some weight.
Yeah. Oh, I could see that.
Even though he's astoundingly handsome now.
Yeah.
I do think that he could be kind of a character that could pull this off.
That's what the director can yell. Like, I need more Neville Longbottom. Yeah, I don't know that I have a ton more to say, but
I think it's a great film, and I think that everyone should see it. I hope that it gets nominated, but I imagine there's going to be more documentaries that deserve it more, and I don't hope that it gets nominated over more deserving things. But I would like to see it nominated for something, and that should be in wide release everywhere by October.
Yeah, I wouldn't discourage anybody from seeing it, just because I was a little milder on it. I think it's perfectly worth checking out.
Yeah. And it's a great pairing with Iris as well.
There you go.
Let's move on to the cats at play.
That's right.
The kitties, or perhaps the...
Kedis. I think that's how you say that in plural.
I believe so.
It's not like octopi, Kedi. It's maybe also...
Ketipie? I will say they're cutie pies.
They are cutie pies. I think we should maybe just, on a more serious note, be transparent. Like, are you a dog person? Are you a cat person?
I'm non-biased. I've had dogs. I don't have one now. I've had cats. I have a cat now. But I live in an apartment, and it's a lot easier to have a happy cat in an apartment and to leave for vacation with a cat than it is with a dog. But once I'm a landowner, I will be once again a dog person. How about you?
All fair things. I am allergic to cats, as you know, as our listeners are hearing for the first time.
You do fawn over my cat when she is present, so you are not a non-cat person.
Absolutely not. I adore cats. I equally adore dogs, so, I love them all.
So we're lacking a dog-cat bias. That's how you know we're trustworthy, folks.
We are... fair sources.
We are the creme of the crop. Creme de la creme.
That's right. Kedi, I love this documentary.
I did too. I did too. So, in documentaries, are you still navigating towards your form over content? I meant to get to that kind of before we got this far into our documentary talk, but let's dig in.
I think form is still of great importance to me.
This is kind of the first documentary so far that the form became almost more important than the subject.
Yeah, in a way, the form is the content.
It is, yes. We do these swoops, sweeps, skitters, jolts along at shin height, as if the camera is a cat.
Yeah.
And we see these moments of, only places where cats go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when this came out, multiple times I considered going to watch it in the theater, and I thought to myself, there is no way I need to watch this in the theater. I will wait until it comes out on VOD.
I think it could have been really beautiful in the theater.
I really regret it. I think there would have been something pretty special about watching these cats dwarf you on the big screen, especially when the camera goes close on some of them, and a cat's face is filling the frame. And I think,
or when it's kittens, that are without a parent and being nursed by the citizens of Istanbul. Is that correct?
Yeah.
We're in Istanbul in this documentary.
Yeah. To me, it's one of those docs that prove the rule that sometimes the less you do, the less that can go wrong. This easily could have been overburdened with voiceover narration. Or just too many interviews.
On the highway building, or
acknowledging like anything that like the local government has to say about these pests or something like that. Instead, like it's really just
I do get the sense there's about 400 minutes on the cutting room floor.
Oh yeah, you gotta think, right?
Yeah.
I don't recall seeing. Surely this had its own editor. I don't think he directed it and edited it. But like that would have been a feat to have tackled this.
And to figure out which citizens' interviews to leave in and which ones to take out.
Yeah.
Which moments to leave, which ones not to. This is kind of the only documentary so far where there's multiple subjects, and I can't tell you that I want to see less or the same amount of any of them. I only want more of all of the cats and all of the cat people.
Yeah.
I only want more of it.
Yeah, there is something to that.
I want a docu-series.
I agree. In the trailer, they make a point to, like, note the name of each cat and their label, It's like, this is, I don't know, the name of the cat. He's the hunter, and this one's the cuddler, and this kind of thing. You don't get those little title cards in the documentary itself.
No, you don't.
Instead, you still kind of get these individual portraits, but I think by not having that, like, it all sort of bleeds together in a much more just natural way, which I really enjoyed. And as focused as it is on the cats, like, I think this is, like, a film that really develops its sense of place, right? Like, this is as much about the cats themselves as it is just about how they are sort of embedded in the city of Istanbul, right?
And by doing that, I think that it kind of expresses the identity of the citizens of Istanbul even more. We have these moments in the market. We have these moments with fishermen. We have these moments with a man who, instead of going home after he gets off a long day's work, is carrying around plastic bags of food and making sure that he sees all the cats that he knows.
Yeah.
And he knows which cats he's not seen, and he knows which ones are pregnant and which ones just had kittens and which ones kittens are about to leave, and he's aware of all these things. And we watch cats sometimes walk up to the fishmonger and take the fish out of the ice.
Yeah.
And we kind of see him cast a downward look of displeasure, but he doesn't do anything to challenge them taking that.
Yeah.
And that is his own small gift to these, pieces of the city that are keeping the rats at bay. To me, this is equally a documentary about the absence of rats.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a relationship movie, right? It's the cats and how they relate to the city and how they relate to the people. Like, that is as much the focus as kind of like the cats themselves, I guess.
It's almost a love story. It kind of feels like Lady and the Tramp somehow, even though it's all about cats.
Yeah. It's a weird, it's another one that I think is kind of hard to rate for me, because it's like, I really don't feel like there's anything wrong here. Like,
it just doesn't do anything perfectly, is the other criticism I would have, or the only criticism I would have for it. Yeah. At no point is it absolutely perfect in doing something groundbreaking. And I think that in order to ascend over a 4, you do have to do something groundbreaking.
Which
and
is
I think
hard.
that's really, really hard to do in a documentary format, unless your subject is extraordinary. I think it's really only attainable for feature films.
Yeah, it's like, is this, to me, the best documentary about cats in Istanbul that I can imagine? It's pretty close. I don't know that I would ask for much else.
The only other thing would be a first-person camera collar view of a hunter cat in the sewers of Istanbul murdering rats for an hour and a half.
That'd be pretty cool.
I would watch the fuck out of that, too.
More like if De Palma directed or something.
Blow cat.
So yeah, like, I was pretty concerned that it was just going to be too cute, and that's why I kept postponing it, and I didn't feel like that at all.
I think it was adorable and cute, but it was also cute, kind of challenging, and it showed moments of cat hostility over territory, over female cats as territory, which is just fascinating in the current cultural climate that we're still allowed to have these conversations extracurricularly through separate mammals.
Yeah. The one that I think I gave it a 3.5. I kind of want to bump it up to a 4.
That's what I gave it.
Did you give it a 4?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I love my kitties.
I think you're right about that. I think sometimes just the images themselves are enough. Like, this was a splendid way to spend an hour and 20 minutes. It's not that long.
Or how about the cat that when he wants to come in, he holds his paw up and kind of stands sideways and knocks on the window?
Adorable.
Or it could even be the same cat, the cat that goes to the meat shop and knocks on the window to make sure that they know that he's outside waiting for his daily meats.
But he won't actually go inside. He waits, right?
And that's why he gets it. And he eats underneath the bench, right?
If only we were all as polite as that cat. We can all learn from that cat.
And I think that it was great to get kind of an interpretation of Istanbul's classic trading structure and its sea trade by talking about the cat breeds that came in on the ships that were there to kill the rats on the ships, and then they would get off the ship and never get back on the ship before the ship would leave port. That's how they got all these Norwegian cats. And within the film, you do see a lot of Norwegian cats.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're different in some pretty significant ways, but I think this would be like kind of a fun feature with the documentary Rat Film. Did you see that one last year?
I haven't seen that, and once I watched this, I really wanted to see it. It's just I have never been able to find a copy.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
I think that it's kind of only available digitally through their website.
Yeah.
I was hoping that Hulu or Netflix would have it, by now.
Yeah, it's a little surprising. It was released like early last year. I'm kind of surprised it's not available for.
I know it is kind of a splitting film.
Yeah.
I think some people gave it like their film of the year. Their put it in their top 10, and other people hated it and gave it a 2.
Yeah.
It's a splitting film. And I understand it kind of makes a artificial intelligence or technological claim by the end of it, which is somewhat interesting.
Yeah, that's true, and I think that resonated less with me than just sort of the parallels between the rats of this city, Baltimore, and the people of Baltimore, and how race sort of parallels the community of rats. It's weird to call it. I guess our community, rat population.
Knowing myself and you knowing my documentary likes, do you think this is one of those things that I'm going to hate because it tries to make a factual, thematic, or thesis claim at the end of the film?
I don't think so, actually, because to me this is in a way, it's more a documentary that is really just nothing more than a collection of evidence. I don't know that there is a thesis. I think some of the best documentaries, leads. I mean, maybe you would equally dislike that if there is no claim. But to me, I
don't mind when there's not a claim. Right, 5'2" doesn't have a claim.
Yeah,
McQueen doesn't have a claim. I don't mind when there's not a claim.
Yeah, I mean, these are clear. These are clear sort of relationships and trends, but sort of what you deduce from these premises is, I think, sort of left up to you, especially just, in how it sort of proceeds. Like, there are just all kinds of different forms, right? It's not just interviews. It's, maps overlaid against each other of, like, where populations are in Baltimore and where the cats are. That's something that would be interesting to see in Kedi, right? Is like, where are most of these cats?
Breakdowns of Istanbul cats versus rats.
Yeah.
But I think that could compromise some of its tone and sweetness.
I don't think I actually want that. It would just be interesting, but you're totally right.
That'd be a fun edit to see.
Yeah.
I just kind of building on the idea of making a claim at the end of a documentary. I think that the only documentarian I've ever let get away with it and appreciated it would be, or specific documentary would be like Lo and Behold Reveries of the Interconnected World.
It's a Herzog, right?
Yeah. I think Werner is one of the only documentarians that can build his entire documentary in a way where you find his claim to make sense by the end of it. Yeah. Whereas most other documentarians, I don't think have as strong a voice as he has.
Are there ones that you think are good examples of the thesis being first?
There are, but I just couldn't.
Not to put you on the spot.
I couldn't think of them 2 births in.
Yeah. Exactly.
Once we get on the other side of Infinity War, they'll all be flooding back to me.
That's exactly right. So yeah, 2 thumbs up Kedi for me. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I have a heart. I have 4 stars, as it rightfully deserves. And I think that I've never scored a documentary higher than a 4.
Mm-hmm.
I may have given 5 Foot 2 4.5, but that would be because of the artist, or the artist who is the subject. Mm-hmm. And I think that the only way to get above a 4 is to have a subject that is begetting of that. And I think that's why a feature film can get a 4.5 and a 5, because the actors are such great artists, as well as the artist portraying the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. The subject has to be worthy of it to begin with.
Exactly. The only film ever that doesn't follow this formula would be 2001: A Space Odyssey, where the form and the presentation is why it's a 5, not the actors.
Oh, yeah. Have you seen Camera Person?
Not yet.
Oh, yeah. Gotta check
I know
that
that's a top of your list. I believe it's one of your 4 films that you like on Letterboxd.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. But I still have to get to Umbrellas of Cherbourg. So.
Priorities. That's a tough call. I'll let you decide which one first. Any final thoughts, or shall we move on?
I love it. I love kitties. You love it. You love kitties, and you're allergic.
It's correct. It is available for digital rental, I believe. I don't think it was on Netflix.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But it's definitely on all the typical stuff.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure that it's going to be on and off instant streaming throughout the future. So always make sure that it's not streaming through a Google search somewhere else before you rent it.
Yeah. Just hope that Criterion picks it up or something like that. All right. Moving on to our next and final documentary of the podcast, which is Minding the Gap.
Life might be moving too fast. We have to fully grow up, and it's gonna suck. When you're a kid, you just do. You just act. And then somewhere along the line, everyone loses that.
I knew you had some huge weight on you. Skateboarding meant more to you. It was kind of a life or death thing.
I remember hearing screaming coming from your room, and it was like really, really unnerving.
Hulu original.
I believe it's Bing Liu's documentary film, wherein he is the subject and kind of the gaping emotional hole that builds the structure of the documentary.
Yeah.
And I loved it a lot more than I expected to. It is up for Golden Brick consideration on
I didn't know that.
Film Spotting podcast.
Okay. Did you listen to their podcast?
I did.
Gotcha. Cool. Were they positive?
They were, yes, they were positive, but Josh was skeptical about some of the moments, as only Josh could be.
Gotcha.
He took me off guard. Right when you think you've got him figured out, he throws a wrench in you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I loved it as well. I thought it was pretty incredible that a documentary filmmaker this young would sort of be as humble and sincere as he was. In no way did this ever feel overexcited, which I think you get with some first-time filmmakers, or
so an interesting
cocky.
point that they kind of brought up was, yeah, he's a first-time filmmaker, but do you think he's a last-time filmmaker? This is all his life. This is comprised of years of his life and footage of it. Do you think he'll make another film, whether or not it's a documentary?
I could see him doing cinematography on additional films. I don't know that. To me, this was such a personal story that it's. I mean, I can't say I've listened to interviews or anything like that with him, but I can't say that this is something that it felt like he is just compelled to tell other people's stories. This is as much, for us as it is for him. Yes. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was like, this was just something like that I needed to do.
And
but
that's why I think it's so strong, because it is a film he needed to make, and it's about him processing things that he needs to process. And he's open. He gives us the scene where he openly questions why it is that he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
And that's the same reason why I love 5 Foot 2. Mm-hmm. The honesty that Gaga has is the same that Bing has.
Yeah.
where he's being self-critical.
Yeah.
You know, while he's in his emotional pain, while he's digging around in the fact that he was being abused by his mother's husband, and his mother was being abused, and his half-brother's being abused. Gaga's, you know, laying there in sheer agony, criticizing herself for her wealth.
Yeah. Yeah. It did remind me a little bit of Camera Person, in the sense that the director of Camera Person, her name's Kirsten Johnston, and she's primarily a documentary cinematographer. Absolutely one of, I think it probably is my favorite documentary, and just one of my favorite films, period. But it's one that, like, I don't know that, like, I expect her to, like, follow it up with something great, because it just feels like a memoir. And, like, we all kind of have, like, one memoir, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess, you know, it's not, stories about yourself are very different from stories about other people. And I think this is as much about Bing as it is about these other subjects.
I'm trying to think of that documentary for that Vietnam film. The documentary of the making of Apocalypse Now.
Ooh, I don't know that one.
It's better than the film Apocalypse Now. Is basically the crux of it. And it's kind of like that, like, you know, a life can be beautiful, but a documentary about a life can only be made once, and you can never make another one that'll be just as good.
Yeah.
Now, you can make a bad one, but then you're kind of destined to, you know, always be second fiddle to that. But you can only make one truly great one. And if you've already made it, you can't go back to the well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do think, like, what he does with the camera is impressive, and it works. Like
those moments of movement, much like Kedi, where we're kind of at calf height and we're watching the board zip along. We're watching the wheels and the skateboards and the boys mind the gaps, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Bing is assembling and editing this film, minding the emotional gaps and the emotional gaps that the parents of these boys had that are perhaps continuing this generational historical violence.
Yeah.
Once again, to bring sharp objects up, this is the subject kind of the film. Bing's abuse, Bing's mother's abuse, Bing's half-brother's abuse, the abuse, I don't remember her name, but the abuse of the girlfriend within the picture who has the child with kind of the almost the most affable character until we really understand. It starts with a K. What's his name?
Oh, I should have looked these up beforehand, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Call him Chris. Kieran was the African American, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So
okay, gotcha.
Until we get to develop Kieran's character, Kieran isn't as sympathetic as the other character, who we go to understand is abusing women.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's kind of this switch, and I can't really put my finger on when, but Kieran becomes more sympathetic, more affable, and has more magnetic weight in the film. And I think that maybe reflects Bing's growth in relationship with one over the other.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start getting more time spent with the girlfriend of this other character and his son than we do with him.
Yeah.
And then we find out that he moved to Colorado on a whim.
Yeah.
That he's throwing knives or something. That he's acting like a hooligan. And you know, he moves from one hard job to another hard job, but his jobs keep becoming less respectable. Not that he's doing anything that's deplorable or anything, but he moves from being kind of a construction worker that's making a good wage, good living, into kind of working at like a Subway or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's working backwards. Normally people work at Subway to build up their job history and then they make another move.
Yeah.
Not kind of the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is sort of like a slow trajectory we see. Like, I think at first when we see him interacting with his kid, like, I kind of thought this is going to be a story about him maybe stepping up to the plate. And being a good dad.
That's very much the tone of the first 30 minutes.
Right? And I think that's
and he played us well.
Yeah.
Bing did a really good job of playing into our expectations.
But it's not like an aha gotcha. Like, it's just life kind of as it is.
It's kind of...
That's just the way it happened.
No, it shows us our own internal narrative where we, as people, expect men to show up and change and develop more character and work harder when they are presented with more, you could call it baggage or you could call it responsibility.
Yeah.
And we were 100% expecting that. But then he goes on to behave as these other boys' parents had behaved.
Yeah.
Deplorably.
Yeah. And it's interesting, and I think some of the more critical takes of the doc that I've read voiced some frustration with being not taking him to task for it, which I think is interesting, and not sort of confronting him about it. But I think making this documentary,
he does confront him in the fact that he asks him.
Yeah, but right. But the point is that he doesn't criticize. He doesn't say, I think you're making a mistake or something like that. Some people thought it was, I don't think anybody actually used the word like cowardice or anything like that. But to me, that's what the criticisms were implying, was that perhaps Bing should have stepped up, having recognized this. And I think that's what he's doing by making a documentary.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's less effective than letting everything play out and letting him show his friend exactly how his friend seems to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a take, but one that I don't agree with. I think
it's a weak take that speaks very politically agendaed.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I disagree. I think the making of the documentary and choosing to portray his friend's decision to do something that Bing, quite clearly knows will not be digested well by most audiences, I think.
Well, he doesn't know about it until after it's
happened. Yeah, but I'm thinking of, the scene towards the end when, I wish I could remember that kid's name, who we're talking about. Not Bing, but the other friend. Not Kieran, the other guy. And they're sitting somewhere, kind of looking over a lake and having a beer, and he says, sometimes, a girl's just got to be slapped or something like that.
I think that him getting to see himself say that.
Yeah, exactly.
And see his friend's reaction not correcting him will bring about more change that is lasting than if he were to have corrected him.
Yeah, I think, for the sake of the documentary, I agree. I kind of, in an alternative reality, hoping maybe did say something.
No,
right?
As a person, right, you and I would have said something.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of shows Bing's strength, where he's kind of playing the long game, where he's going to bring about lasting change.
Yeah.
Where I think that this documentary can bring about some lasting change and hopefully shine a light on the city of Rockport that clearly needs it.
Yeah.
There's kind of a clear problem in the amount of children that are left to do nothing without any supervision and without any direction in this city.
Yeah.
And the skateboards seem to be the thing that they're kind of using as fathers. It's hurting them. They're running away from their fathers because they hurt them, but they're trying to master this board that moves on wheels, and they're boys that are trying to master life moving forward throughout this picture. There's a clear metaphor there, and I thought it was very beautiful and touching the way that Bing was able to capture it, kind of in this ethereal but really grounded tone.
Yeah. I grew up watching a lot of snowboard movies.
Johnny Tsunami.
Well, no, the Trans World Snowboarder magazine.
Oh, yeah.
Those kind of ones.
I'd pop those in, too, but nothing tops Johnny Tsunami. But
also a great movie. But yeah, in a way, I was like, it was way before I ever sort of realized how much I love movies, and I was like, I'm sure I should revisit those and just realize the artistry that's on display. With some of that
the way that they get some of the cascading snow when they're going off of a cliff. and how it covers the dark snowboard outfit completely before they emerge from behind the pure white.
Yeah.
And they continue rocketing down the mountain.
Yeah. It certainly made me like want to revisit those in a way. But yeah, I also think like so many documentaries make the mistake of thinking that like to make a documentary you just have to find an extraordinary subject, which I think is a mistake. Like I think sometimes great documentary filmmaking is just about paying attention.
Or ordinary subjects with extraordinary average day-to-day moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Just by being observant, by paying close attention, you find the extraordinary in the ordinary.
I don't think that's what happened in Minding the Gap, though. I think what happened was that Bing had raw, unresolved emotions, and that his friends that he was filming skateboarding and their moments in life ended up recurring this generational pattern of violence against women and against children that Bing had experienced himself and had deeply affected him. And I think that raw wound is the direction that this took. I think it's a lot more focused, and I think it's on accident. I think it's deliberate after a certain point, but I think that it begins as an accident. It's just him filming his friends. And I think that it begins to develop. And that's best illustrated near the end when Kieran says, or when Bing tells Kieran why he's making the documentary. And kind of the last or second to last interview with him before he moves to Colorado. And Bing tells him about being beaten by his stepfather. And Kieran's like, I had no idea. And he's like, that's why I'm making this, because I thought that our stories were very similar. So he's making this documentary without even telling anyone the reason behind it. And so I do think it's deliberate, but I also think that because they had no clue what was being or what the end goal was for Bing, that it's also very much accidental.
Yeah, accident. I don't know if that's the word I would use.
Incidental.
That wouldn't be my first choice of word.
If you know what a documentary's end goal is, you will behave differently because of it, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
they
surely
didn't know what the goal was.
Surely, whatever we see Kieran and the other kid do, is incidental because Bing's not telling them to do anything. But like, I wouldn't want to me, the word accidental or incidental somehow undercuts, I think, how observant Bing was in acknowledging the role of economic depression. Let me finish. Okay. I think I think he was uniquely observant for a kid in that town relative to a lot of the other kids we see in that town. Yes. To pay attention as closely as he did to the role that the economic depression in this town played in providing these kids not a lot of opportunities, in even sort of recognizing that these kids had similarly troubled upbringings. I don't know that, I believe every person has this in them, and I think that, there is, something special about the voice he brings to this that I wouldn't describe as incidental. I would describe as uniquely observant.
100%. His authorial voice is observant and noting of the nature of the city, the lack of its economic finances, the lack of opportunity, and how that affected, number one, the father figures, which are classically based on their generation expected to bring home earnings, especially in Kieran's perspective. But what I'm saying accidental or incidental, I'm not talking about Bing's authorial voice within the documentary. I'm talking about the footage that he captures from the people that are part of this, Kieran and the other boy, and the girlfriend and the child. This is incidental footage or accidental footage, and what I mean by that is that they don't know what Bing is making. And therefore all the footage has to be incidental or accidental because they are not allowed to behave in a way where they know the end derivation of the goal. because of that, I think that he ends up with incidental footage that he can assemble in a way around his authorial emptiness at the pattern of generational violence that affected him and both the other boys. And what's fascinating is that you're picking up on the economics of Rockport.
Yeah.
And that's what affected their fathers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It's not like a new thing. Yeah.
And that boy, he built that skate park, right?
Yeah. And it went nowhere.
And that was kind of his dream.
Yeah.
That was his dream. He was going to be a dad. He was going to have this skate park that he was going to run, and that was going to be... And once that fell apart, it seems like that's when the generational violence picks up.
Yeah.
That, dreams fall apart in the city of Rockport, and they begin to act like their fathers. And their fathers were bad men who couldn't make enough money for them and would take out their rage at life on them.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really struck by some of the footage of Kieran's mom and her dating some other guy who we kind of see like on the periphery of the screen, but who is by no means filling the gap.
You remember what Bing says?
No, I don't remember specifically.
So is that your friend? Yeah, he's a friend. Later, when he's not there anymore. Where's your friend? Oh, he's not around anymore.
Yeah. It's another gap that's not exactly filled.
Another lens format thing that depicts this really eloquently and I think just as accurately as this and feels like real life is The Chai from Lena Waithe. It's a television show on Showtime, and there's a scene, I think episode 6, that's very, very much similar to that moment of not the last moment where he's gone, but that first moment where he's there for the first time, and it's an adult son dealing with a man who he doesn't know if he's going to be like all the other men and be bad or not. And you don't leave the show knowing really, but it's this continuous thing of these poor economic straits bringing this out of men more than women, it seems. Yeah. Because men, in these classical terms, are putting it on themselves to try to find a wage, and when they can't, they either continue doing something that is not going to bring home as much as they need, and they hate themselves for it, or they're going to do something terrible to make enough money, and then they're going to behave deplorably because of it.
Yeah. It's like many docs, like you kind of want to see these people revisited, right, in like a decade.
I don't know if I want that. I think that would break my heart.
Could be.
I don't think that what's his name is going to stay in that marriage for long. I think Bing chose really quaint footage to end it. Yeah. With him, that is him being nice to his friend rather than him being mean. I think you end it in 2 years, and it's a lot more depressing. Yeah.
I didn't listen to the film spotting episode, but I think I read Josh's review, and I think he maybe had the same quibble about the ending that I did, which is maybe that he maybe tried to end it on a bit too much of an emotional crescendo or something like that. There's kind of a montage and a musical high note that I think it tries to kind of pull together, and I don't know that it was necessary. Like, I think I was already feeling more than enough.
Yeah, that comes up on the episode.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And I am in Adam's camp where I think that he earned it as a documentarian. He built up to that, and I think that's earned, and I think you're more against it, and that you didn't need that. You were already there.
Yeah. Sometimes
I do think
it's just too much for me. It's like
more broad. Though. I did you not give it a perfect 5 because of that?
I don't think it was that specifically. No, okay. I just think it was just knowing
just
relatively what a movie can do for me. Yeah.
Why did you not give it a 5?
That's hard. I mean, sometimes you just know what movies can do to you, and you know what a 5 feels like. And I don't think that there was something specifically wrong with this. I just know that it didn't quite get me there in my enthusiasm for it.
But I got you close.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Is there anything that you would have rather had Bing do?
that moment is one, since we're talking about the finale.
Oh, okay, so we're talking about the finale. You don't want that. What do you want instead of that as a finale?
I don't know that I like to say that. I mean, to me, like, I'm only able to talk about, like, what they did do. Otherwise, I just, like, you can go in an infinite number of directions, right? I mean,
so,
I kind of have to start with the art itself. Pardon?
You don't have something deliberate that you feel like you'd rather have seen there.
Content-wise, no, but I would say I had already hit, I think, the emotional peak, and I think tonally it could have been perhaps slightly more subtle in that kind of conclusion. What else? I don't know. I'd have to think about it. If there was anything else that was, like, wrong that I thought, like, rubbed me the wrong way versus it just being something that is not a doc that I'm as excited to revisit as others.
So you don't want to watch this again?
I think, I mean, I would watch anything that I give a 4 or higher again, probably. But I don't think, so, I just, for comparison, I don't think I experienced something quite as profound as I did when I watched Camera Person, which I did give a perfect 5, which I think about probably once a week. Every time I watch a movie, I feel like I think about that movie.
It's your mother.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Like, we kind of saved the 5s for those films, right?
I think I might give them out a little bit more heartily than you do.
That could be. Yeah. So yeah, like, I don't know that there is anything wrong, but I think scope, ambition, scale, all those also contribute to the ratings for me. Something that is truly reaching for some kind of unforeseen heights or something like that plays a role. Otherwise, you could do something tremendously small scale and sort of more manageable and do it well. And then I'd be getting 5s, I think, for things that I would forget about more quickly.
I think that you could have, just to ask myself the same question, I think that he could have ended with Kieran having his emotional breakdown at his father's grave. That would have been just as strong. And I also think that if there was ever a moment where being handed off the camera to the fellow who has the child who abused his girlfriend, who is now married or engaged to the other girl, if at any point in time in that filming he ever handed him the camera and then it was Bing and Kieran skating in a bowl, that would have been a perfect ending to show both of them moving. And show him standing still watching. That's kind of the only 2 thoughts that I'd had after I watched it. I was kind of like, I didn't love the ending, but I understood it, and I had kind of an idea of what he was going for, where I came up with better endings, but what he made and accomplished as his debut film is an incredible feat, and much better than Searching.
Oh yeah, wait, why do you say Searching?
Debut films.
Oh, gotcha. Top documentary of the year?
It's been released this year, yes, but I have a feeling that you and I might be a little bit of a sucker for Pauline Kael. Even if we give it a 3.5 or a 4, I could see myself rating it higher than this in my end of the year, just because of what she means as a person.
Yeah.
And also, I'm pretty partial to that McEnroe. Breakdown of the physical athlete or physical artist, you could say, is what he was doing.
Yeah, we won't get into it here, but is Won't You Be My Neighbor anywhere towards the top of the list? I can't remember. I've seen that on there.
It's around 23. It's kind of a decider of things that I'm actually considering in my top 20.
Yeah, it's a little...
Because I love it. It's a lovable film. It's the most rewatchable documentary of the year. It's a documentary you're going to want to watch with your kids. It's a documentary you're going to want to watch with your grandkids. It's a documentary that you want being played at childcare centers.
Yeah.
It's this super broad, sweeping documentary that you hope that everyone sees before the Oscars.
Yeah.
But it's not a serious consideration for a top 20 film.
Yeah. 23. That's fair. A lot left to go. Probably not.
It's kind of like the Barack Obama of films. You love it, right? Like it's immensely respectable. Is filled with great character and a great man, and you love it every time you see it, and it makes you smile.
Yeah.
But there's just some other stuff you like more.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to click on kitten videos. Maybe you want to do something else, you know?
That makes sense. Yeah, while we're on documentaries, like, I can't think of that many more coming out in the fall that we really need to have on our radar. So
I believe there might be a Catholic Church one coming up that's going to go into the legal processes and kind of what they're doing to manipulate Ireland.
It could be interesting.
And that will possibly be an interesting pairing with something like First Reformed or Mary Magdalene or both.
Yeah.
And then I also didn't see the propaganda film that the Catholic Church put out about Pope Francis, but that'll be coming out on digital release soon.
Yeah.
So that'll be in consideration because he is a good pope. You know, it's just that Vatican City country state superpower of wealth is a very questionable system, and they're just actually deplorable.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in the event that we are dwarfed by features, I'm glad that we made the point to do docs just ahead of the fall, right? I think this is the right time, just in case the ones that catch our attention are small.
Yeah, we got features on the list for kind of the next month.
I know.
We're busy. We got The Nun here in a couple days. We're going to be recording Globalism at the end of the week. We're about to go see Infinity War. You for your first time.
That's right.
Me for my fourth.
Fourth? No way.
Yep.
Holy smokes.
And I'm eagerly anticipating seeing it again in IMAX because I loved it. It won't be as good as IMAX 3D.
That's got to be almost as many characters as there are in the film, right?
Not even close. We're going to do Madeline's Madeline hopefully by the end of this month. What else do we have? White Boy Rick.
We have Colette. You put that on there, I believe, correct, right?
Colette.
I think that's on the calendar.
Are you talking about Toni Collette? I'll watch a Toni Collette film.
I don't know what this is, but I thought I saw this on the calendar.
Oh, maybe.
There's a new Jeremy Saulnier film in a couple weeks that's...
Hold the Dark. Going to be released on Netflix for everyone. Yeah. Then there's Lizzie, the Lizzie Borden film. But Colette, I'm fascinated. I feel
Didn't you put that on there?
I may have. You know me. I do things and I instantly forget about them. Colette, the 2018 film.
I don't know what this is.
Oh,
but...
yes. This is a feature film with Keira Knightley and Dominic West.
Oh,
yes. I thought that this might pair nicely with one of Keira's like atonement film, or she's got a few period films available on Netflix, or you could finally catch up with Laggies and I can watch a different one and we can make a cross comparison.
Yeah. Surprises even on the podcast. Yeah. What we will be discussing.
All right. Well, I think that we're going to get back to this brute offline. We went over what we had to talk about. This has been Doc Talk. Any last closing statements?
I don't think so. Great chat as always.
Yeah.
Great beer as always.
Doc Talk and Drink in the Movies with Michael.
And Taylor.
Tune in next week where we will be talking about a film that we don't know yet because we'll release this far, far, far into the release schedule future.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers. Solid cheers, man.
Run! Go! Get to the chopper!
We have to go.
I'm coming with you.
That was brilliant.